What's up, everybody? This is Roman Gennaro. Welcome to another episode of Empire Sports Talk. I'm going to try to keep this a little shorter than usual. I know I say that usually, but this time I really am going to try to do it. So let's jump right in. We have four main things that have kind of dominated the sports landscape over the last couple of weeks, or the last week or so we want to jump right into that. We're going to do NFL first. The big news of the day is that the Cowboys and CeeDee Lamb have finally agreed on a contract. The details are 4 years, $136 million with a record $38 million signing bonus. This will make Lamb the second highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL behind Justin Jefferson. Lamb's average annual value of the salary is $34 million to Justin Jefferson's $35 million. This feels right to me because Justin Jefferson is the best wide receiver in the NFL. There's not much debate to that. What I think you could argue, and what I would have argued if I was CeeDee Lamb, is that CeeDee Lamb is much more needed to his team than Justin Jefferson is. Don't get me wrong, Justin Jefferson is really good, but the Vikings also have TJ Hawkinson. They also have Jordan Addison. They also have Aaron Jones. They have all these other weapons. If you take CeeDee Lamb away from the Cowboys, Dak doesn't have anybody. And that was reflected in the fact that CeeDee Lamb was responsible for 35% of the Cowboys' total offense last year. So somebody on ESPN this morning said if you take CeeDee off of that team, they're a 4-win team. And I don't think it's that extreme, but they have had some injuries that are going to make it interesting. But the deal is finally done. CeeDee Lamb is coming back to camp with 9 days before the first regular season game, and this is where I think it's going to be a problem. Every time we see these holdouts from these notable athletes, a lot of the times they end up getting hurt because they're not in football shape. There's a difference between being well conditioned and being in football shape. I remember for me, every time I would finish a year in college, this is just a bit of a personal take, I'd finish the year in college and I would have to walk around a lot, and because of my condition I use about 3 times the energy of a normal person, so I would sweat a lot, and it would take a long period of time for me to get into what I called campus shape. And so I would leave campus and I would go home, and even if I spent the whole summer working out, which I sometimes did, I would come back to campus and it would take a couple of weeks for me to get back into campus shape. I was in shape because I'd been working out in the gym the whole summer, but it would take a long time for me to be in campus shape. So CeeDee Lamb is not in football shape right now. So we'll have to wait and see if injuries play a part, if he has a hamstring issue like we saw with Darrelle Revis back in the day amid his holdout and other situations like that. The thing I want to talk about, though, is the fact that this was much more of a story than it should have been. Jerry Jones is constantly talking about wanting to go for it all. The only thing that matters is winning Super Bowls, all this stuff. He's always talking, and maybe that's the problem. But Jerry Jones said how important CeeDee Lamb was to them and how they wanted to get it done, and yet they never seemed to get it done. And then there was a report that came out that said, as recently as today, that the Cowboys and CeeDee Lamb were only $1 million apart. Jerry Jones is one of, if not the richest owner in the NFL. And word has come out that you're only apart by $1 million. Now maybe the deal got done because they got down to only being apart by $1 million, or maybe the deal got done because the report came out that they were only apart by $1 million, and Jerry knew that wasn't going to make him look good, and so they got it done. Either way you look at it, the more details that came out about this CeeDee Lamb and Cowboys stalemate, the worse it looked for Jerry. Whether he would say something and then immediately contradict himself, whether he would, and then when asked, I guess, about if he should continue as the Cowboys GM, Jerry Jones said, no one else can do it. Now, I get that Jerry Jones has had success as the owner and GM of the Cowboys. But as time has gone on, that success has been more attributed to the hiring of head coach Jimmy Johnson, who was responsible for all those Cowboys Super Bowls in the 90s, than it was to Jerry. Because if it was Jerry, then how come the Cowboys won the Super Bowl in '95 and haven't been back to haven't even played in an NFC Championship game since then? If no one else can do it, Jerry, let's have a look at the other GMs around the league. Let's have a look at teams since '96, since the last time that you appeared in an NFC Championship game. Teams that have won multiple championships. The Patriots, they won 6. Their entire dynasty was in that window of you running the team, you being the GM, you saying no one else can do it. The Patriots did it 6 times, the Chiefs 3 times, the Broncos 3 times, and I want to pause there and remind Jerry that Elway won twice as a player, retired, came back as the GM of that team, and won a Super Bowl in the time that you haven't appeared in the NFC Championship game. The Buccaneers, their only 2 titles in franchise history. They have 2. The Giants have 2. The Ravens have 2, which the last time you were in an NFC Championship game, 1995, the Baltimore Ravens did not exist, and they've managed to win 2 titles in that time. The Rams have 2. The Packers have 2. Both Favre and Rodgers have won since you last won. And the Steelers have 2. That is 9 teams that have done something, that have had GMs that can get the job done multiple times with less money, with less notoriety, with less than you have in Dallas, and you haven't gotten it done once. That whole list of teams, that entire list of teams have won multiple championships. You're standing here saying, my only goal is to win a Super Bowl. And as evidence, you need CeeDee Lamb, you need Dak Prescott, you need Micah Parsons, and that's not good enough. And yet you didn't make any big signings in free agency. You didn't make any trades. You didn't make any splashes during the draft. You said, we're going to run it back with what we have, when what you have and what you have had for the last 30 years has proven to not be good enough. And yet you're sitting here saying, oh, we're all in, but you were in a stalemate with CeeDee Lamb despite him being your entire offense. You now have Dak and Micah Parsons watching this being like, well, I'm not feeling good about myself come next year or whenever it's my turn, because all that drama of them not wanting to cough up the extra million or them not wanting to pay for the guy that is clearly the right guy. If I'm Micah or Dak, I'm looking at that going, forget that. Dak's about to be able to write his own check next offseason. If he were to sign with the Cowboys, that would be a pretty dumb move at this point. You've seen how Jerry negotiates. You've seen how cheap he is. You've seen that he's pretty much all talk, because that's all he ever does. He says, oh, winning a Super Bowl is the most important thing. Then prove it. Then go make the big moves. Then go do the things that the Chiefs and the 49ers and the Rams and teams have done in recent years to put them over the top when they were that close. Go do that. And you haven't done that. So it's hard for us to sit here and believe you when you say you're all in, when what all in is starting to sound like it means is win 12 games in the regular season and then get embarrassed in the playoffs. That's what it sounds like all in means in Dallas, because year after year, despite all of the talk, despite all of the extra noise, that's all we get. And even though they did manage to sign CeeDee Lamb today, it was more drama than it needed to be. This should have been done weeks ago. Dak is looking at that and is undoubtedly not happy. Micah Parsons is like, what is it going to be like for me? You know, all these players you do have that are difference makers can't look at that favorably. So what does that mean for you? I don't think Jerry Jones has a chance to get back to another Super Bowl the way he has handled this offseason with CeeDee Lamb. But the deal is done. We will see if CeeDee Lamb is able to stay healthy despite not getting a proper ramp-up time to the regular season because he's held out this whole time. The next thing that I want to get up to is the other really interesting football story that came out was something that had a couple of twists and turns that had me changing my mind a couple times. The current quarterback of the USA flag football team for the Olympic team, Darnell Doucette, I hope I'm saying that correctly, originally came out when people started talking at the conclusion of this Olympics when it was time to look forward to 2028. Darnell Doucette came out and started talking about NFL players shouldn't just assume that they could walk on and it's not quite fair and, that we're out here doing this, that we're responsible for the growth of the sport and all this stuff about, whether NFL players should be allowed to play in the Olympics. Mind you, if Tyreek Hill shows up on the USA flag football team, you can just give us the gold medal now. But anyway, and to his first point of we've been here grinding this whole time. We're the ones that have grown it to the point where it's getting put into the Olympics. We're the ones that have put in all the work. So these NFL, it's not fair for these NFL players to just assume that they'll make it. I was kind of with him. Now look, if Tyreek Hill or Patrick Mahomes shows up and says, I want to play, or Christian McCaffrey or whoever, if an NFL player shows up and decides, I want to play, you're out. Heck, if Peyton Manning or Tom Brady showed up and said, I want to play, they're probably playing. It's flag football. They're probably going to, they'd play. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. The NFL is a global phenomenon where all the best athletes in the world are playing in the NFL because there are some foreign football leagues, but they're not nearly to the same level as the NFL. But to his point, I was kind of with him because I get it. You're the captain of this team. You've been doing all the work. You've been bringing notoriety to the league. I get it. But then Doucette realized that he was making headlines. He realized that his comments had gone viral. And he doubled down in the worst way possible, where he lost any support that he had been getting from fans. He said that he believed he was a better football player than Patrick Mahomes because of his football IQ. And that's where he lost everybody. There's tape of Darnell Doucette, and he's athletic, he's quick, he's fast. But Patrick Mahomes is well on his way. And I've been very vocal about you can't call him this yet. He hasn't been in the league that long. He's only halfway to Tom Brady. He's well on his way to being the best that has ever played in the National Football League. In a league where grown men in pads try to hit him as hard as they can. Doucette plays in a league where the only thing you have to do to stop him is pull a flag off of his waist. Granted, if he's fast and he's agile, it's going to be hard to catch him. But when you catch him, all you got to do is touch him. Patrick Mahomes is getting hit in the mouth 30 times a game. Getting sacked, getting hurried, getting hit, getting blocked, getting taken to the ground. To even compare your situation and Patrick Mahomes' situation is completely asinine. Now, flag football is different than the NFL. It's not harder. It's different. And for you to say, oh, my IQ is better. It's like, okay, Patrick Mahomes is playing with guys in full pads. You're playing with guys in Nike shorts and New Balance sneakers with ribbons around their waist. I'm sorry. It does not take as high an IQ to be good at flag football as it does NFL football, the highest level of professional football. And Patrick Mahomes has proven on that football field that he can do things that we have not seen. from Hall of Famers decades and decades and decades before him. We've seen, thanks to the Netflix documentary Quarterback, the intense ways that Patrick Mahomes trains himself and gets ready. And he uses his baseball background to explore different arm angles, to figure out how to escape situations that he wouldn't otherwise be able to escape because of his baseball background. We've seen video of Darnell Doucette's release, and it would get eaten alive on any field besides that flag football field. So I was with him when he was talking about it's not necessarily fair for these NFL players to show up after all this time and assume they'll make it. From that standpoint, I get it. Now, if they were to show up, like I said, duh. There are some retired players that I would put on that team if they wanted to be. Joe Montana still looks like he could throw it in his 60s. I'm sorry, like, these are guys who have done it at the highest level. And yes, the highest level is the NFL. It's not flag football. But I understand why you'd be upset to say, after all this time, after all the growth that we've put in, after all the work, you want to come in, in your off season and just take over. I get it. But if that's what happens, there's a reason that that'll be what happens. Tyreek Hill's one of the fastest men on earth. Patrick Mahomes, one of the most talented people to ever pick up a football. Christian McCaffrey, if he decided he wanted to play, would run over anyone that was in his way. I've seen those players on the flag football field, and I've seen players in the NFL. The NFL would kill them. And so I understand Doucette's frustration, but he was speaking out of frustration and making some of the dumbest statements he could possibly make. You're not better than Patrick Mahomes. You don't have a higher football IQ than Patrick Mahomes. Potentially no one in the history of the NFL has a higher football IQ than Patrick Mahomes. It's absolutely ridiculous. Switching to Major League Baseball, there was one particular really cool story, and baseball's been around for a long, long, long time. It is very, very rare that you truly get to make history, truly get to be the one to do something for the first time. You can be the first person to do it in 50 years, the fifth person ever to do it. Those are great accomplishments, but it's very, very rare that you get to be the first player to ever do something. Earlier today, as we record this on Monday evening, Red Sox catcher Danny Jansen got the chance to be the first player ever to do something. Danny Jansen now plays for the Boston Red Sox. On June 26th, he played for the Toronto Blue Jays. He was traded from the Blue Jays to the Red Sox in late July, right alongside the MLB trade deadline. The reason this is significant is because earlier today, on Monday, August 26th, 2024, Danny Jansen became the first player in MLB history to play for both teams in the same game. And we've seen it before where a player right near the trade deadline gets traded, and he happens to get traded to the team that's in the other dugout at the moment that he gets traded. And he shows up, he leaves his team's dugout, and then a few minutes later he shows up in the other team's dugout during the game. We've seen that happen, but never has it happened where that player walks through the dugout and gets on the field because they don't have a jersey for him, they're not prepared for him. It's just the way it works. This was unique because on June 26th, the Red Sox and Blue Jays were playing each other and were in the middle of a game when it started to rain. I believe they were in the 5th inning. And so the game was put in a delay for the rain, and it rained so badly that the game had to be postponed. But because normally, if you get past 5 innings, the game will just be called. It'll be a 6-inning game, 7-inning game, whatever it is, and it'll be called final. This game had not been played long enough to be considered a full game, so it had to be postponed and picked up at a later date. The soonest that the teams could resume the game was today, August 26th, 2024, 2 months after the original start of the game. In that time, as I said, on July 27th, Danny Jansen was traded from the Toronto Blue Jays to the Boston Red Sox, meaning that when this game resumed today, Danny Jansen was on the opposing team. So, presented with a very rare, never done before opportunity. Boston Red Sox manager Alex Cora could say, oh, if I put Danny Jansen on that lineup card, he becomes the first player in MLB history to play for both teams in the same game. And that's exactly what Alex Cora did. Now, we had to wait until pretty much game time to know that was going to happen, because sometimes, and it's super annoying, but it does happen, sometimes managers will ignore when history has a chance to be made because it's not the right baseball move, or because they're too into the game to do it. But thankfully, Alex Cora recognized the sheer unique opportunity that was had to let Danny be the one guy. And he said, I think he finally came out and said yesterday, let's make history. And Danny was on that lineup card. Not only did Danny indeed make history as the first player to play for both teams in the same game, because remind you, this is resumed play from that June 26th game. So this is not a new game. It's the same game. They picked up play in the 5th inning. You have to get through 5 for it to be an official game. That's why it was postponed to be finished later, because they hadn't gotten through 5. Not only did Danny become the first person to play for both teams, he played for both teams in the same inning. Danny was at the plate for Toronto when the game was called. So when the game resumed, Danny was behind the plate for his own at-bat. What happened then? The announcer said, now pinch hitting for Danny Jansen, because Toronto was at bat when the game resumed. He said, now pinch hitting for Danny Jansen, Dalton Varsho. So with Danny perched behind home plate, the announcer announced his own replacement to finish the at-bat. It was just one of those moments you have to stop and be like, whoa, that's crazy. Because like I said, in a sport that's been around as long as baseball, as long as Major League Baseball, you don't get a lot of those first evers. You get a lot of first in franchise history. You get a lot of first in the last 50 years, first in the modern era, first since 1965. You get a lot of that. You very, very, very rarely get a first in the history of Major League Baseball. And Danny Jansen got to be that guy today as he took the field for the Boston Red Sox, making him the first player ever to play for both teams in the same game. Congratulations to Danny on that incredibly unique accomplishment, and thank you, Alex Cora, for recognizing the moment and giving it to the fans and giving it to Danny. I like moments when you can see managers be fans, and I felt like Alex Cora putting Danny Jansen in that game, in that situation, was Alex Cora being a fan of Major League Baseball, being like, let's do something cool. You know, you saw, it was last night, I think the Showtime Lakers were being honored at the Dodger game, and Dodger manager Dave Roberts was freaking out. He was so excited. He said, I grew up watching these guys. These guys were my idols. And he was like a child meeting the Showtime Lakers. And I feel that's what we forget oftentimes about sports and what sports can do, not only for fans, but for players and coaches as well. And we sometimes forget that. So sometimes it's nice to see those moments where everyone can step back and be like, oh my gosh, how cool is that? So thank you, Alex Cora, for recognizing that moment. The last thing I want to get to is, and I know some people would be like, dude, you're crazy to even bring this up, but I want to give Marcell Ozuna his moment here. In the race for National League MVP, 3 names have been thrown out there pretty much as the 3 front runners. Shohei Ohtani, of the Dodgers, Marcell Ozuna of the Braves, and Ketel Marte of the Arizona Diamondbacks. Now, it almost seems like a formality that Ozuna and Marte's names were thrown out there because it feels like everybody just assumes it's going to go to Shohei Ohtani, and I'm not saying that it shouldn't go to Shohei Ohtani. What Shohei Ohtani has done in his 7-year MLB career has been insane. We've never seen anything like it. But something I've often brought up on this podcast, and I've written about on the blog a few years ago, was that I think the name of the award that's given to the best player should be changed. Because the name does not reflect, this might sound crazy, the name does not reflect the actual criteria. The award is the MVP, the most valuable player. What it's actually handed out for is the league's best player. And if that's what the award is, I'd say give it to Ohtani. I'd say he is the league's best player. He is the face of the National League. At the very least, Aaron Judge is all but a shoo-in for the American League. But the award is called Most Valuable Player. And one surefire way to define value is if that player is removed from your lineup, what does your team look like? When I first wrote about this, it was back in 2015. And the National League MVP race in 2015 is what caught my attention because that's what first made me question the title of this award. Is that, as I said, what you should be looking at if you're looking at true value of a player is if you remove this player from their team, what happens? And I looked back at the 2015 National League MVP race. Bryce Harper finished first in the voting. Paul Goldschmidt finished second, and Joey Votto finished third. Now, just based on those names, you'd think, oh yeah, those should be the top three guys, and maybe they should be, like they had great seasons. But let me pose it to you this way. In 2015, the Nationals finished 83-79. They missed the playoffs. Goldschmidt's Arizona Diamondbacks finished 79-83, missed the playoffs. And Joey Votto's Cincinnati Reds finished 64-98. Obviously missed the playoffs. So if we look at it from a standpoint of the award being called the most valuable player, how much value did they bring to their teams? It might be, they bring value to the game of baseball, and it's true that they do. But what brings more value to the game of baseball is if that player, if the MVP is playing in October, which none of these three guys were. And so, because obviously, if you take them off their teams, the teams are bad. But given these records, if you put them on the teams are still bad. So from a standpoint of that word value, and I've always had a stickler of that word when it comes to this award, I'm not saying that Harper shouldn't win the award or that Goldschmidt shouldn't be in consideration for the award, but they should rename the award to Best Player because value implies something else. And so from that standpoint, the first player I always think of when I think of the most valuable player, if it was given out for what it's named for value, the first player I always think of is Buster Posey. In 2010, Buster Posey and the San Francisco Giants won the World Series. In 2011, Buster Posey broke his ankle in a collision at home plate. A collision that opened up the conversation that would eventually lead to the rule being changed where you can't block the plate. Buster Posey missed all of 2011 due to that injury. Came back in 2012, had an unbelievable year, and the San Francisco Giants won the World Series again. Oh, by the way, that entire season that Buster didn't play, they missed the playoffs entirely. So they went from World Series champions with Buster to out of the playoffs without Buster to World Series champions with Buster again in 2012. That's the definition of the words most valuable player. That, in my opinion, I'm not saying. I just rename the award. Rename the award. MVP implies something else. But when you look at it from that standpoint, Shohei Ohtani is unbelievable and deserves any and every award, always, forever, always. But when you look at it through the lens of the season Marcell Ozuna is having, it's hard not to bring up the value conversation again. Shohei Ohtani and the Dodgers currently have the league's best record. They are a favorite to at least get to the World Series in the National League. They are one of the most exciting teams in baseball, but they do have a three-headed monster. Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, and Mookie Betts. Any one of those guys can pick it up on any given night, and they have other players that can do it as well. But it's those main three that get the job done. This year in Atlanta started off similar to the Dodgers. They were looked at as World Series contenders, as a possibility, and then injuries just tore the team apart. But somehow they've managed to remain in an NL wildcard spot through all the injuries, through all the changes, through everything, all the ups and downs, because of the massive contribution from Marcell Ozuna. He has been the only constant bat in that lineup. He has, since the second half of last season, been playing out of his mind. He's easily having the best season of his career. And he is, in every category, it seems to be Ozuna and Ohtani 1-2. Marcell Ozuna easily would have been the National League starter at designated hitter if Shohei Ohtani was still in Anaheim. But he lost out for obvious reasons. Marcell Ozuna leads the National League in average and is tied with Ohtani in RBIs. And this is going into play on Monday night. He's tied with Ohtani in RBIs. Marcell leads Ohtani in hits and trails just behind him in slugging percentage and on-base percentage, and obviously Shohei Ohtani has more stolen bases. And Marcell trails just behind him in home runs. So you might look at it on paper. If you're looking at who should win for the league's best player, you look at it on paper as Ohtani. And I'm not going to disagree with you if you look at, if you take Ketel Marte, Marcell Ozuna, and Ohtani, look at them all side by side and want to give the award to Ohtani. All I'm saying is the V in MVP stands for value. And if we're looking at value to their team, Marcell Ozuna this season is the definition of value in Atlanta. He has single-handedly, along with the pitching of Chris Sale and Reynaldo Lopez, dragged this Atlanta Braves team to the brink of the playoffs. Mookie Betts missed a couple of months, and the Dodgers didn't blink. Ohtani could go down tomorrow, and it would be a big loss, but the Dodgers would still have Freddie Freeman and still have Mookie Betts playing really well. Same with Freddie Freeman. So if we really zero in on value, and I get it, most of you are going to come and say, well, that's not what they give the award for. And I agree with you, and that's why I think they need to change the name of the award. Because they don't give the award out. It's clear they don't give the award out based on value, or else the entire three finalists of the 2015 race would have been wiped out. I'm just saying change the name of the award. If you're going to give it to Ohtani, change the name of the award to the league's top player, best player, whatever. But most valuable player prompts a different conversation if you really think about it. And from the standpoint, for the 2024 season alone, the more valuable player has been Marcell Ozuna. that is my soapbox. That is the hill I will choose to die on. That not just in baseball, but I use baseball a lot as the argument's sake because of that 2015 race. Not just baseball, but all the MVP awards should be changed to something else or viewed through the lens of value. That's my soapbox. It will never change, and I'm okay with it, but I will always bring up that point. That's all I have for you. Check out our YouTube channel because right now we are running our preseason NFL predictions playoff tournament through Madden, just like we did last year. The first one launched tonight, Monday night, and will go all the way up through the Super Bowl, finishing right around the start of the NFL season. Check that out. You can also go to our previous episode where we actually did rank each division. See what you think of our rankings. Check out those preseason prediction simulations, and we'll see you on the next one.